Next, with you throughout the night, we've ITV News Election 2017 live coverage of the results, hosted by Tom Bradby. Now we join Tom Bradby live as he heads up our ITV News coverage of the results of the 2017 general election.
You might call it the short, sharp and to the point election. And in exactly 5 minutes' time, we will get the broadcaster's joint exit poll, and thus the first indication of how it might have gone. But whatever the result, one thing seems beyond doubt tonight. The next 5 years are not going to be business as usual. Welcome then to ITV News Election Night 2017. Good evening. It was a short but nevertheless tough campaign, full of controversy and with those 2 terror attacks, far too much heartache. Now, as the seconds tick down to the close of the polls with that first strike of Big Ben at 10, it is clear that a great deal does hang in the balance. Today's election might have come 3 years earlier than anyone expected or wanted for that matter, but it certainly was not the campaign those who called it expected. It began with the Prime Minister strolling out into the spring sunshine to catch the world by surprise.
I have just chaired a meeting of the Cabinet where we agreed that the government should call a general election.
Whatever you say about Theresa May, she and her team certainly can keep a secret. She said this election was all about Brexit, but that has rarely been true. If she does win tonight, the next 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years may very well be all about Brexit. No one expects that to be easy, and none of us can know if the politics of this country will be the same at the end of it. From the moment his manifesto leaked, we knew Jeremy Corbyn's campaign was not business as usual.
When we win, it is the people, not the powerful, who win.
If he wins tonight, are we in for a radical, even revolutionary, as he might put it, ride? But if he doesn't walk into number 10, what then? Does he stay? Does he go now? Does the party hang together or split asunder? Tomorrow, the fight to shape our destiny begins for real, and what happens tonight is likely to have a critical impact on how that battle unfolds. Well, we have assembled here tonight what we really think is an unrivaled panel of experts. We have the 2 political heavyweights everyone wanted in their new roles as commentators, the former Education Secretary and Shadow Chancellor Ed Balls, and former Chancellor and editor of the Evening Standard, George Osborne. How Theresa May must still love hearing that line. We have correspondents at key constituencies all over the country and a journalist at every single count, all 650 of them, which should deliver the results before any other organisation in the country. Our political editor, Robert Peston, and national editor, Allegra Stratton, are here, of course, to give us their analysis of the results as they come in and make sense of the new political landscape as it begins to take shape. Just outside the studio, we've created a media hub where Nina Hussain will be tracking how it is all playing out online with Google and Twitter. She'll also be getting reaction from our specially invited guests, each with their own area of expertise. And to make sense of the numbers and indeed the voting patterns, we have Professor Jane Green of the British Election Study, one of the country's foremost experts on voting trends, and Professor Colin Rallings, of course, who's been our elections analyst here for 30 years. We have about a minute to wait now before we get the exit poll conducted with the other broadcasters, as we said, which we'll give you as soon as Big Ben strikes at 10. Colin, we should stress the exit poll. It is a poll, but it's been pretty accurate in recent years.
It has, and one of the reasons for that is based on real voters coming out at the ballot from the ballot box and asked to cast their vote again in secret for our researchers up and down the country. And what we also do is we go back as far as possible to places where we've been before so we can measure change. And the point of the exit poll is to estimate the number of seats for each party rather than the share of the vote, which is what conventional opinion polls tend to do. But in that regard, I should emphasise that for the two largest parties in particular, there could be a margin of error of 20 seats up or down. So it will indicate in the direction of travel, but it may not be the exact indication of where the night will end up.
OK, and very briefly, Jane, what will you be looking at for?
Two really important factors in this election. One is the UKIP vote, where that goes. The other is turnout amongst young people, totally crucial if Jeremy Corbyn's going to have a good night.
Brilliant, OK. Well, there we are. You can see Big Ben, and we are waiting for that first strike. We can't give you the exit poll before 10. It's against the law for obvious reasons. But as soon as we hear that first strike, we will be able to tell you whether Theresa May has been justified in calling this election. She said she wanted a big majority. Has she got it? It's 10 o'clock and we can give you the result of the Joint Broadcasters exit poll, and it predicts only that the Conservatives are the largest party. This is a simply stunning result, so let's just leave it up for a moment to take it in. The Conservatives on 314, that leaves them, if it is correct, considerably short of a majority. Whatever happens, Theresa May's authority, if this poll is correct, looks to be shredded. It is not in the least bit clear at this point of the night as to whether she's going to go on being Prime Minister and will be returned to Downing Street. 326 is what you need for a majority. She looks to be well short of that. As Colin said, there is a margin of error of plus or minus 20 seats in this exit poll. If she goes up, she can just about get over the line, but if she goes down, we may very well be looking at Jeremy Corbyn as the next Prime Minister in Downing Street. Indeed, we may very well be looking at that anyway. In summary, the Tories, it looks, according to this exit poll, it is only a poll, an indication, not a result, but it looks as if the Tories have had a terrible night, possibly shredding Mrs May's reputation, really, and authority, certainly, permanently. The Labour Party has had a pretty good night. The Liberal Democrats ticked up a bit, moved up to 14 seats, not a huge change, and worth also mentioning, the SNP, who had that incredible night in 2015, up to 56 seats, looked to have had a pretty poor time also. George, can I just bring you in as we look at that? George and Ed, maybe George, you first. This is a stunning result. None of us expected it. What do you make of that? What's your first take?
Well, it is early days. It's a poll. If the poll is anything like accurate, this is completely catastrophic for the Conservatives and for Theresa May. It's difficult to see, if these numbers were right, how they would put together the coalition to remain in office. But equally, it's quite difficult looking at those numbers to see how Labour could put together a coalition. So it's on a real knife edge, and I think over the next few hours, it's going to make a huge difference, just a few number of seats, because, you know, by my reckoning, both parties have got coalitions which just fall short of an overall majority. I think there are also going to be questions that we're going to start asking about, you know, is Jeremy Corbyn would be the most hard-left Prime Minister this country had ever seen. He'll have to govern with Scottish nationalists. And, of course, the whole question of what Brexit looks like in this scenario gets thrown up. But, look, I don't want, you know, now I'm a newspaper journalist and I look at these results as a journalist, but as a politician, I'm just thinking, let's wait and see. We've got a lot of real votes to be counted and, you know, we're clearly going to be in for a very long night.
Listen, we can say a couple of things straight out the gate, can't we? It's too close to call. Probably we're not going to know the result until dawn. Every seat is going to count. And as I said, this exit poll is an indication, not a result. It can go up. Ed, what's your... I mean, let's just assume for a moment that it's in the right ballpark and talk numbers and coalitions, because ultimately that's what we might be talking about until dawn. What's your assessment of this?
The last 2 years have been so turbulent in politics, and we thought tonight maybe there would be something predictable, and this is the continuation of that turbulence and that unpredictability. This is an exit poll that nobody was expecting. I think we thought the parallel for the Conservative Party would be 1987, a bad campaign, but still a majority. People wondered whether it might be 1983 for Labour. In fact, this looks like 1974. A Conservative Prime Minister who didn't need to call an election, who said who governs the country, who had a bad campaign and has been given, if this is right, a real kicking by the British people. In 1974, the Conservatives tried to form a government and failed. Labour then had a very unstable government. There was a second election in a few months' time. And now the question is about what does Brexit mean? Where do we go from here? If this is right, this is the beginning of a very, very turbulent period in British politics.
OK, well, let's just look at the historical context for a moment, because maybe that is instructive of the poll, and then I want to work around and hear what everyone else is going to say. That is the overall result, but let's just place it in some kind of historical context and see where we are. You know, you can see there the obvious point, the lower Conservative seat number than David Cameron in 2015. That absolutely makes a mockery of Theresa May having called the election. And George, can I just... I mean, Theresa May, unless this is drastically wrong, is she... I know you're not her biggest fan, let's put that on the table straight, but honestly, objectively, is she finished as Tory leader come what may?
Well, look, but by the way, I work very well with Theresa May, and I think she has intelligence and integrity. I mean, clearly, if she's got a worse result than 2 years ago and is almost unable to form a government, then she, I doubt, will survive in the long term as Conservative Party leader. But, you know, we are all talking about a poll. We're talking about, you know, and so, you know, I'm nervous of making certain statements, but, you know, look, you can't... The problem she will have, if it's anything like that number, she's got Irish unionists. I haven't seen the numbers of the breakdowns of the Irish unionists in the other category there, but, you know, that does not get you necessarily to 326. Okay. And the Liberal Democrats, on 14 here, which is a little bit better than they did last time, are so unlikely to go into coalition with the Conservatives this time round, not least because they've made commitments to things like a second European referendum. Well, so I look at those numbers, you know, I helped put together the coalition in 2010, and you could make the numbers quite easily add up if you could get the Liberal Democrats and the Conservatives to come together. I look at these numbers, you can't make it add up. You would
absolutely need the Ulster Unionists and probably the Liberal Democrats to have any kind of stable government if that number was right.
But equally, if you add up the Labour number, the Scottish Nationalists and the Liberal Democrats, you get to 314.
Okay. And so everyone has said...
This is a result that falls right between two possible coalitions.
But also the Liberals have said, and Labour has said, no coalitions with the Conservatives for the Liberals or with the SNP for the Labour Party. So I don't think we're going to be in coalition territory. We're going to be in a very, very unstable hung parliament. Who governs? If this is correct, there'll be a second election soon.
OK, that's just enough to gladden everyone's hearts, isn't it?
Up, eh?
Yeah. OK, well, listen, I want to come to Colin and Jamie in a moment. But, of course, we've had the exit poll, but now it's all going to turn on the results. And with the polls closed, the race to be the first to declare is, of course, already on. In this election, there is a battle, believe it or not, between two cities in the northeast. Traditionally, Sunderland has been the first area of the country to declare. They're working very hard there. But it has competition tonight from nearby Newcastle. They are aiming to be able to deliver the verdict in the first seat in about an hour's time, around 11 p.m. Say we'll come back as soon as they look like they're closed. Colin, the exit poll, what an exit poll. I mean, context. Let's begin with a bit of context, can we?
Well, this has been drifting towards Labour all day. We began to look at the preliminary figures at about 3 o'clock this afternoon, and as every drop came in, as we interviewed more and more people across the country, Labour seemed to be doing better. Let's be clear, both Labour and the Conservatives